Hello friends, welcome to my channel EduBase Coaching. Today I am going to teach you Standard 6th History, Chapter 1, What, Where, How and When. So in this chapter, you can see the picture of one girl, Rashida, on the first page. And she was reading the newspaper. And her eyes fell on one small headline. 100 years ago, she was reading the news about what happened 100 years ago. And she wondered how people can know what happened before 100 years. So, if we want to know about yesterday, we could read radio, watch television, and read, listen to the radio, watch television, and read a newspaper. And if you want to know about what happened yesterday, last year, we can we could ask somebody who remember. And after before 20 to 30 years ago also we could know about from our parents or grandparents, but what about long year ago? So what what can we know about past? So at that time, what kind of people ate, what kinds of clothes they wore, in which kind of houses they lived, and we also find out about the lives of hunters, herders, farmers, rulers, merchants, priests, craft persons, artists, musicians, and scientists. We also curious about how which kind of games children played, which kind of stories they heard, and which kind of plays they saw, and which songs they sung. So, where did people live? Basically, people choose to at that time people chose to live near the bank of river. Why? Because they here there they could find the abundant of water, and before because of water sources they could find uh, many varieties of fruits and food. So people had lived. Now find a river Narmada on map 1, which is given on the page 2. Here people had lived along the banks of this river for several hundred years ago, and for the several hundred years. And some people, or some of the earliest people who lived here were skill gatherers. Skill gatherer means they collect the food and used to eat it, and they knew the vast wealth of the plants in the surrounding forest, and collect roots and fruits and forest food so for their food. So they also hunted animals. So now on the map we can find the Suleiman Kilhar Kirthar Hills to the northwest side of the map. Some of the areas where women and men first began to grow crops such as wheat and barley 8,000 years ago. Means the people used to first time they started to grow wheat and barley before 8,000 years ago, and where the Suleiman and Kirthar Hill. So people also began rearing animals like sheep, cattle, and at that time they basically lived in villages, and they reared that sheep and cattle for meat and milk purpose. So now locate the hills to the northeast of the Vindhyas. Northeast of the and the Vindhyas in central India. So these are some common of the other areas where agriculture developed. So let us locate the places which referred in on the last. This is the Kirthar and Suleiman. It is located in the northwest side of the map, and Garo Hills. These are the Garo Hill, which is on the northeast side of the map, and Vindhyas on the central part of the India map. So the places where rice was grown at the first time was the north. Uh, First time are the north of the Vindhyas, mean the central part of the India. And now trace the river Indus and its tributaries. Tributaries means the small rivers that meet to the flows into the large rivers. So let us trace that Vindhyas, that Indus river. This is the river Indus, and these are the tributaries of the Indus. They are flowing into the Indus river, Indus river, these tributaries. Now about 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the bank of the river. Later, 2,500 years ago, developed on the bank of Ganga and its tributaries and also sea coast. Now, locate the Ganga and its tributaries called the Sun. In ancient time, area along these river to the south of the Ganga are known as Magda, which is currently lying in the state of Bihar. So as we have seen that the people at that time were hunters, food gatherers. Then after that they started to uh, rule the rule the kingdom. Means that there was a need of the kingdom to administer that part of the kingdom. So its ruler was very powerful. Magda's ruler was very powerful and set up a large kingdom. Kingdoms were set up in other parts of the country as well. Now let us see how why do people travel? Why did people travel from one part of the country to another country? So basically, they travel from one part of the country to another country for the in search of livelihood, and they travel from one part of subcontinent into another, and hills, high mountains, including Himalayas, deserts, and river and seas. At that time journeys were very dangerous, but not never impossible because there were no developed routes over there. And as I told you, the people moved in search of livelihood and also escape from natural disaster or natural calamities like flood and drought. And sometimes men marched in armies because they wanted to conquer the other lands. They want to rule the all of other land, large land. So that's why they march in land and travel for that purpose. And they merchant travel from one part of the with caravans and ships to uh, for carrying valuable things from one part of the country to other. Caravans and ships. Caravans means group, and ships carrying good valuable goods from place to place. And also religious teachers walk from village to village to preach the people and stop to offer the instruction and advice in the way. Means they what do they what kind of instruction they wanted to pass from to the people, how to behave, what are the good things, what are the bad things. For that they that religious teacher walk from villages to villages and used to preach the common people. So finally some people also perhaps travel driven by spirit of adventure. Some wanted to know about the wanting to discover new and exciting places. That's why they used to travel. So all the people let sharing of ideas between people. So that's why the people used to travel at that time. So what we have seen that for what purpose the people started to travel. So first were in search of livelihood, to escape from natural calamities, and to carry goods, valuable goods from one place to another place. And also religious teachers started to walk from one village to preach to other. And to preach the people, and also some people travel in the spirit of adventure. Now let us see, why do people travel nowadays? So people, we know look at the map and he look at the hills, mountains and the sea from the natural frontiers of the subcontinent. While it was difficult to cross this frontier, those who wanted could did scale of the mountains, means that at that time it was difficult to cross the hills, mountains and seas. But those who wanted could did scale the mountains and cross the seas. Means there were people who did the scale, who crossed the seas and mountains. So people from across the frontier also came into the subcontinent and settled here. Means across the subcontinent also came and settled over here. These moments of people have enriched uh, our cultural tradition. That's why it was helpful to develop a cultural traditions. So tradition pass from one place to another. People have shared new ways of carving, composing music, and even cooking food over several hundred years ago. That like that they shared all the ideas among through among all the peoples. So names the land. Now, uh, two of the words we often use for our country, like India and Bharat. So the word India comes from the Indus, river Indus, that is called Sindhu in Sanskrit. We can find the Iran and Iraq in your atlas. Now Iranian Greeks who came through the northwest side about 2500 ago were familiar with the Indus, means they crossed the Indus and call it the Hindus or Indus, means the Greek and Iranian started to call the Indus river Hindus or Indus, and land of to the east of the river called India. That, and the name Bharata was used to group of people who lived in the northwest, who are mentioned in the Rig Veda. So like this we can call Bharat also. An earliest composition in Sanskrit we can find the name Bharat, later used to for the country, that dated 3500 years ago. We found the name Bharat for the northwest side of the country, Bharata. So finding out about past. So there are various ways to find what happened in the past. One is one is to search and read books. We can we can find out about class by reading the books um, that were written long years ago. These are called manuscript. At that time there were no invention. There what paper was not invented at that time. So people used to write on the bark, on the leaves, on the palm leaf and bark of tree, that is called birch. So Manu in Latin, Manu means hand and script, handwritten. So that's why manuscript means we could find a manuscript, means we could find the information. We can find the information about the past on the that manuscript, which was written on the palm trees leaf and on the prepared of bark, space or bark of the leaf, that is called birch, which grows in the Himalayas. Now manuscripts were written away by or the that insects so destroyed, but many of them we could find in the monasteries and temple. So they are preserved over there. We can right now also uh, can find the information about this on in the past in the mm, leaves that are preserved in the temples and monastery. This book dealt with all kinds of subjects like religious beliefs and practices are written over there. The lives of kings. How do people live? How did kings live? Medicine and science. And beside this, the were epic poems, plays, etc. Many of these were written in Sanskrit. and other were written in the Prakrit or Tamil. The Prakrit and Tamil was the language of were the language of common people. So we can also study the inscriptions. Inscription means that these are written on the hard surface, such as stone and metal. So sometimes kings got their orders on the order for the common people, so that they could see, read, and obey them. That was inscribed on this stones and metal surface. These are the king kinds of inscriptions, such as where men and women, including kings, queens, recorded that what they did, means what kind of victory they did. They often used to inscribe their victories, means like uh, in the battle. So there were many other things that were made used in the past. Those who study these objects, called archaeologists, means these objects, means what are the written on the barks of trees or leaves, and that metal surface. The person who study about these are called archaeologists. They study the remains of buildings made up of stone. Buildings were means remains of buildings made of stone and bricks, and painting and sculpture, and excavate. They also explore the things and excavate, dig under the surface of the earth to the find tools, weapons, pots, pans, ornaments, and coins. Some of these objects made by stone may be made up of stone and others of bones. So baked clay or metals. So subject objects that are made of hard surface imperishable substances usually survive for a long time. So let us revise once, means how do we come to know about the past. So by reading the books, and at that time there was no invention of paper, so the people used to write on the bark of palm leaf tree, palm leaves or bark of tree, that is called birch. And also we but they many of the tree bark leaves, that leaves, palm leaves and birch were destroyed by insect, eaten by insect and destroyed. And but some of them we can find in the monasteries and temple, they are preserved over there. And we could find the information on the by inscription, means the information written on the hard surface, that is inscribed on the hard surface. Basically victories of the king in the battle are mentioned over there, and orders, and what kind of for the common people's order, new rules, all these things were written on the inscribed on the stone. And the person who study about that, all these things, these are called archaeology. They study. How do they study? They dig the earth and find out the hmm, tools, weapons, and pots and pans and ornaments and coins, and uh, mm, by scouting what they find, they study about it, and we know the information about this, and buildings and sculpture and all these things. Objects that are made hard, imperishable substances usually serve for a long time. So from that also they come to know the information about the past. So archaeology also looked for bone, means which kind of animal were there at that time, bone of the animals, and birds, fish, to find what people ate in the past. And remains of the plant remains survive for more rarely, but take a piece of grain and pieces would have been burned. So they survive for in a charred form. Charred form is in the form of coal. They become decomposed, like but they found they can find the information on from that burnt um, pieces of wood and grain that have been burnt now, and they are in the chart form. So historian, that is scholar who study the past, who are the historian, so that is the scholar who study the past, often use the word source. Source means the information found from manuscript, inscription, and archaeology. So they found the information from manuscript inscription and archaeology, that is referred as source. So once sources are found, the learning about the past becomes an adventure. Means as we reconstruct bit by bit, so historian and archaeologists are like detectives. Means it is very uh, adventurous for them to find out the information from that manuscript, inscription, and archaeology. So historian and archaeologists like detective who use all these sources like clues to find out about our past. One past and many. Now, did you notice title of our book is our past? So we have used the word past in plural to draw the attention to the fact that the past is different from the different group of peoples. For example, the lives of herders and farmers were different from those of kings and queens. So the lives of merchants were different from different of those craft persons. So everybody's life is different, and so on. So truly, as is true even today, means even today we find that different people have different lifestyle. So people follow different practices and custom in different parts of the country. For example, today most of the people living in Andaman Island get their food by fishing, hunting, and collecting forest food. And by contrast, more people living in the city depends on the supplies of food, which grow, which are go, which farmer grow in the villages. Differences such as they existed as in the past as well. Means this kind of differences we can found in the we can find in the past as well. So beside there is a another kind of difference. We know a great deal about kings and battles. Means whatever the victories they did, they found because they kept the records of their victories on the in the form of inscription. Generally, ordinary people such as hunters, fishing folk, and gatherers, farmers, herders did not keep the records of what they did. Means only kings used to keep the record of their victories and orders and all these things. But generally, ordinary people, hunters and fishing folks and gatherers of farmers and did not keep their records. So while archaeology helps us to find about their lives, there is much remain unknown. Means we they don't they also don't know so too much about common people. So what do they means? Now if somebody asks you the date, you will probably mention the date, month, year, and year. Now 2000 and something, but these years are counted from the date of the date generally assigned to the birth of Jesus. Means Jesus Christ, the founder of the Christianity, who was the founder of the Christianity. Those 2000 means 2000 years after the birth of Christ. All dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards, usually later BC, backward Christ, before Christ, before Christ, because the date started to count after the birth of Christ. That's why it is after the birth of Christ. Now it is referred to as AD, and the days uh, which are before the birth of Christ, we usually have the letter BC before the birth added on. In this book, we will refer dates going back from the present using 2000 as our starting point. So, BC means before Christ, BC refers to the before Christ, AD refers to the Anno Domini. It is Latin word meaning in the year of Lord. Anno Domini means the in the year of Lord Christ. That is Christ, Anno Domini. So, and C stands for Christ era. Common C stands for common era is used instead of AD, Anno Domini. We, we can use C, common era. And BC stands for before Christ era and instead of BC. So C stands for common, BC before common era. BP means before present. Sometimes later we BP is also used, that is before present. Now these are inscription. We have seen the inscription inscribed on hand surface. Many these are inscribed several hundred year ago. All inscription are in the form both script and languages. So languages which are used as have changed over time. So may understand. So how do scholars understand what was written? This can be done by process known as decipherment. So to know about that inscription, that process of means decoding of this information is called decipherment. So we can see this picture, means like some shapes are over here, some animals are inscribed on this, and some letters are denoted for this, means P for square, T for semicircle, like this, O for mouse, L for lion, like this. So one of the most famous stories of decipherment comes from Egypt country, North Africa, where kings and queens were about 5,000 years ago. Means they you so Rosetta is a town of north coast Egypt, and here stone was uh, here an inscribed stone was found which contained inscription in three different languages, basically in Greek and two forms of Egyptian. So scholar work who could read this Greek figured out the names of the kings, queens, and were enclosed in a cartok, little frame, that is called cartok. That little frame enclose whatever the written in the little frame, that is called cartok. So they placed the Greek and Egyptian signs side by side and identified the sounds for which the Egyptian letters, like L, lion stands for L, word for A, and once they know all of what the letter stood for, they could read other inscription as well. So thank thank you everyone, and don't forget to like and subscribe my channel.